Sean Payton goes and gets Bo Nix. I thought it looked when I watched Bo Nix live. I thought, oh, this is Sean Payton's guy. There was a lot of smoke screens on. They
Yeah.
didn't love his hand size. In your opinion, did they decide on Bo Nix a while ago?
They think that I don't want to make them sound arrogant, but they think that they really got one here, and they think that a lot of people are wrong about him. And here's what I thought was really interesting about it. Right, you know what made the Broncos nervous was when our buddy Joel Klatt said something, and when Chase Daniel said something, because Joel Klatt actually was in training camp with Sean Payton, so he knows that offense, and he knows Bo Nix is a player. And Chase Daniel obviously played all those years ago for Sean Payton and is very, very smart about the quarterback position. So they were trying to keep this thing under wraps, but Klatt and Daniel came out and said, this is so perfect. So they saw the same things you were seeing, Colin. And, they did their best to kind of keep it to themselves. And, Sean Payton's obviously affected by the experience in 2017 of losing Patrick Mahomes. They loved Patrick Mahomes in New Orleans, and they wound up getting jumped for him. And so they wanted to do everything they could to try to keep it quiet how much they love Bo Nix. Obviously, they weren't wholly successful doing that. But, what's really interesting about this is Sean is seen as a very old school coach. They leaned heavily on analytics here. And if you talk to analytics people, the numbers tell you Bo Nix was the best quarterback in the draft. And I know that sounds crazy in a year when Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels and Drake May and all these guys are coming out. But when the Broncos went and dug into it, when Sean Payton got the numbers back from their analytics people, I'm telling you, like in so many different categories, critical categories, Bo Nix was number one. So you had the play style, you had all these critical categories, and then you had the meeting in Eugene. And I'll give you one anecdote. When they were walking out, right, like from the meeting room to go out on the practice field, Sean Payton pointed down at Bo Nix's backpack and said, "What do you have in there?" So Bo Nix emptied his backpack. He had a pair of football cleats. He had a roll of athletic tape, and he had a lacrosse ball in there that he uses to crack his back. And the Broncos looked at that and said, "This kid is all about football." And so it's like one of those little anecdotes where, like, all the stuff that you hear about Bo Nix being like all about ball and it's so important to him and a coach's son, they got validation of it. And I think walking out of that room and onto the practice field in Eugene, seeing him throw the ball, then that was when they walked away saying, "Yeah, we can see this guy being the 12th overall pick, absolutely."
Cowboys need a run.
Okay, so first off, I find it really interesting that Colin thinks that the Bo Nix pick is awful and that it's a reach and this or that. He said that in a separate video. I think also on his personal podcast. He's not real high on Bo Nix. Yet he talks about how the Michael Penix Jr. was a fantastic pick and it was exactly what that the Falcons should do, and who cares about Kirk Cousins and all that. So I find it interesting that a lot of people are really digging this pick, and not digging as in positive, like they're dragging this pick down. They think it's a massive mistake. Nick Wright was essentially hysterical about it, acting like this was a disaster for the Broncos. And now you have the Broncos pretty much saying, we think that, this is the best pick in the entire draft. That, Sean Payton is as excited for him as he was for Patrick Mahomes. That he was better, actually, than Caleb Williams. And people are saying Caleb Williams is this generational talent. Now, I want to talk about a few things with regards to all that. One, I think when we use analytics to guide us, it has to just be one of many factors. Because I'm always going to preach this. Comparing stats, especially of different quarterbacks when they're playing different teams, they're on different teams, the data it's not actually good data. And the best example of this is, like, if this was actual true scientific, like, medical data or anything like that, like, they would throw it off. They would say this is not good data. Like, we can't compare these two things because they're on completely different teams, playing different teams with different coaches, calling different plays. Like, everything is just different. Therefore, I'm not sure how to make sense of this. So that alone, I already I'm not a fan of using. But I do believe that the Broncos are actually really excited about Bo Nix, and they believe that he is going to be a great quarterback. And I think Bo Nix has true potential to be an awesome quarterback. And I find it very surprising that people are just automatically saying, oh, Bo Nix is going to be a bust. He's not good, not good, not good. And I don't know where the evidence is for that. We have evidence for other quarterbacks having bust potential that we're crowning as potentially the next big thing. And yet with Bo Nix, he doesn't get that grace. And I don't understand why. I really, really don't. And I think Bo Nix is a great quarterback. And listen, am I going to tell you that he's going to be the next Patrick Mahomes or Caleb Williams or whatever? I have no idea. No idea. But to not think that there's no potential there, or to just laugh and say, oh my God, this was a disaster pick for them, is absurd to me. It doesn't actually make sense to me. I don't know how you're getting there. He played in a competitive program. He was very successful. Sean Payton wanted him. Like, the Broncos are desperately trying to right this ship, and that doesn't mean that they're overreaching or that they're making desperate moves. They're making the moves that they need to make. If they thought that Bo Nix really only had like a small chance of success, then they wouldn't have taken that chance. They would have just been like, okay, you know what? We have a couple great quarterbacks coming in the next couple of drafts or so. Let's just, we're going to trot out Zach Wilson. It's not going to be pretty, but you know what? We're just going to keep building. We're going to get draft picks, yada, yada, yada. And that's not what the Broncos are doing. The Broncos could have traded back and got more picks and built out their team more, and then just waited to get a rookie quarterback in the following, drafts. But they're not doing that. They saw Bo Nix. They want Bo Nix. Sean Payton is excited for Bo Nix, because then there were people trying to like analyze the video of when they drafted and the interview with Sean Payton, like, well, that doesn't really look like someone who's happy. And it's like, do you want Sean Payton to do triple backflips? Like, what do you want him to do? Take off his shirt and start dancing and I seriously, like what do you want from him? Popping champagne? So I just think that right now the Broncos have been very unsuccessful for years. Sean Payton hasn't really been successful for years, and it's business now. It's ready to go. They got their guy. They got Bo Nix. They're excited to move forward. They're not going to be going on this hype train and saying out loud, he's the greatest quarterback to ever play. The Broncos, the new era begins today. Like, that's just not what they're going to do, and I respect that. That's good, and I think Bo Nix is all about the business, which I find exciting. There's some questions that I have about Caleb recently, just because he's so overly confident. And to be clear, I think Caleb Williams will be a great quarterback, but there are certain personality things that I'm kind of like, I don't love this. I don't see a ton of humility, and you need to be humble. That is one of the best things that Patrick Mahomes has going for him. And I'm concerned that Caleb Williams might not have that. Bo Nix clearly has that. So I think Bo Nix will soak up everything that Sean Payton has to give him. And I think Bo Nix can really ascend with Sean Payton and the Broncos. I really, really do. I think Bo Nix will come in there as a blank canvas and will just really become the exact quarterback that Sean Payton wants. And I think that'll be a successful quarterback. I really, really do. I just don't see Bo Nix being a spectacular failure. I just don't. Again, is he going to be a 10-time Super Bowl winner? No idea. Is he going to be a bust and just a failure, and it's going to be a whole situation where they're like, we got to get rid of this guy. We're just going to bench him and have our fifth string quarterback off the practice squad. He's going to play now. Is this going to be a Trey Lance, Brock Purdy situation? I don't think so. I really, really don't. So I just think that this can be a really, really great situation. And I think the Broncos should be excited. I think the Broncos fans should be really happy about this pick and excited. And they have all the reason to be optimistic and no reason to be pessimistic, quite honestly. So I find it fascinating that the Colin Cowherds, the Nick Wrights, the Manginis, the Stephen A's, all these guys, they're just like laughing at this pick. And I find it funny that they think they all know better than the GM and Sean Payton, all of these things. It just doesn't really make sense. The one thing though that I will laugh at is this whole idea of like his backpack was just cleats and a lacrosse ball. That means nothing to me. That's the nonsense that coaches always love to highlight. I've had so many coaches in the past who, highlight those types of things. That's such nonsense. So if he had a book in, I don't know, a Game of Thrones book, or a DVD, or a couple, know who uses DVDs, but a laptop, and you opened up and it was Netflix, like they would think less of him now. If he had an iPad and there was, some TikTok was open, they're like, oh, he's not about business. I think less of him now. Like, I think that's silly. I love doing lots of things. And if I was going to a meeting of some sort and I was meeting with Sean Payton, my backpack would look very similar. And yet I still love to lay in bed and watch hours of YouTube videos and Netflix and do all that type of stuff. So I just think like that coaches love to focus on these little things and they act like it's like the biggest deal. I had this one coach where, he was all about time. The whole thing was if you're on time, you're late, right? You always had to be there like 5 or 10 minutes early. And so there was this one great player who I guess was like always on time, and he was just like, that's what it takes. You want to know why he's so great? Because he's dedicated and has the time and this and that. And that same kid got suspended for doing bad things. This was specifically a high school coach. And then he got in trouble and got suspended. And it was like, okay, so it's just coaches love to harp on these things, whether they're high school coaches, college coaches, minor leagues, pros, whatever type of sport we're talking about specifically now. So it just always makes me laugh. Coach speak to me is always nonsense. It's so much of it is not always. So much of it is nonsense. They emphasize things that they act like that matter more than anything. But I do get it, because in a way we're also talking about the whole issue with like Kyler Murray, and he likes to play video games, and because of that they say, well, now he doesn't watch tape. And I don't think that those are the same things. Someone can enjoy playing video games and still put in the work and watch tape. I'd rather someone be playing video games and watching Netflix and YouTube videos rather than being out partying and being all about the celebrity life and taking pictures for GQ, wearing weird fur coats and stuff and flashy glasses and bonkers hats. So I do get to a degree about them saying that Bo Nix is all business, but using the contents of his backpack as a reason to, emphasize that point, I think is always comically hilarious. And that is I think also people that don't play sports also get seduced by that. They're like, oh yeah, did you hear that story about Bo Nix? He just had cleats and a lacrosse ball in his backpack. And it's like, okay, that means nothing. It means nothing. Some of the best athletes I've ever played in my entire life were some of the most distracted athletes. And it was because when they played the sport, they played the sport. When they were not, they were not. They were doing other stuff. And they went on to have great careers in college, pros, etc. So I just think that's, there's many ways to get to the goal. The last point I'll say is Steph Curry and oh my God, what's his name? Andre Iguodala during the NBA Finals. They went golfing because they weren't happy with how things were going and they just wanted to get away, and they went golfing. Steph Curry and Andre Iguodala, they went golfing. And then the next day, they then turned the series around and ended up winning their first title. So, the whole, you always have to be all about business, I find, a little silly. But those are just my thoughts. I would absolutely love to hear yours. What do you think about this Bo Nix pick? It seems to be very controversial, which I, for the life of me, can't figure out. So if you know why this pick is considered to be controversial, why people are either so high on him, saying he is going to be the next big thing, or he is a bust and Sean Payton is losing it, let me know, because I really can't figure it out. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.